Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am going to play in my traveler's notebook using the Happy Blooms collection from Pinkfresh Studio. I've got these floral die cuts and I've pulled them out for a very specific purpose. That right there, the first sign of spring. My first little daffodil popped out of the garden and unfortunately I had to go and cut it because it was being destroyed by the freak hailstorm that we were having. So spring not quite here yet, but there was no way I was letting the hail destroy that first little sign of it. So I cut it, brought it inside, and it has been bringing me sunshine on my desk all week. So I'm going to put it in my notebook. This is the perfect collection for that. There are a couple of little die cuts with some daffodil-ish looking flowers on them. So I'm going to try and incorporate as much of those as I can. Now, the first thing I want to get on this page is a bit of color, and I kind of had a vague idea of how I wanted to do this. I wanted to add some sort of strips of color on the diagonal. I used one of the 6x6 paper pad pieces, and I just had, as you can see, an absolute nightmare trying to cut this thing so that it would fit appropriately on my traveler's notebook spread. I didn't want it to cover 2 pages, so I just want it to be on this right hand side of the page. So I've managed to cut out the sort of base triangle, and then I was going to add a couple of strips of sort of alternating colors and patterns and use a couple of border punches. So I don't pull these out very often, but I kind of love the look of it. I love this one. It's sort of all pretty and lacy, except it doesn't fit. It's like missing just a couple of pieces on the edge. It didn't quite fit. So I was like, I don't have any of the larger papers in this collection. I only have the 6x6 pad, so I'm just going to make it work. I had a little bit more of this particular pattern left, so I just punched one more little piece. I'm going to line those up and glue them together. The pattern is very busy. You will never know. You will never know that there's a little extra piece added in there. I'm just going to line up the edge of that punched pattern with the triangle that I've already cut out and then just trim down those edges. And like you can see, I really only use just a very, very small amount of that kind of add-on piece. And eventually that's all going to get covered up with florals anyway, so barely noticeable. Not going to make that mistake twice though. I changed my mind about which color sort of pattern I wanted to use for the next punched piece, and I trimmed out the diagonal on the 6-inch paper, so it's going to be the longest length that I can get from this particular sized paper, and that is going to be more than long enough to carry on that sort of diagonal theme here. So I just need to kind of line everything up so that it's going to fit onto my page before I go ahead and adhere that down. I'm only adhering just the edge of it, and then I can go back in with my scissors and just trim off the excess of that, and it means that I get to keep that little extra piece for whenever I need it. It's a little bit watermelon-y themed too, I guess, so I'm keeping that theme alive. Now these pieces, these sort of die cut floral pieces, they've got a white border on them, and I don't necessarily dislike that, especially because I'm going to start layering them onto the pattern paper, but I just felt like the white space was very large, especially since this one here, I'm not actually using that whole floral. I'm going to cut out the little daffodil piece, and when it's on the white background it's also not as noticeable, but this one here I thought it's a little bit big. It makes the whole die cut piece actually very large, not just the white border piece, but it also just increases the size. And I am working on a pretty small page. My traveler's notebook is only 4¼ inches wide, so I am going to have to do a little bit of fussy cutting, which is not my favorite thing to do. Before I start doing all that, I'm going to not really stick it down. I'm not sticking down my background piece just yet, but I want to adhere it so it stops moving around my page every time I add or move these die cuts around. I'm going to add it with a little bit of double-sided tape, and so I've going to tape all 3 of those triangular edges. So I've pulled off the backing tape on just a little piece at the bottom corner, lined that up so I know it's going to be in the right place, and I've left those little pieces out so that I can just pull those and it will adhere down. But at the moment it still gives me the option of being able to tuck some of these florals in and underneath that paper. So you can see that just by trimming down that kind of white edge, just that little bit, and admittedly it did take me some time, but it really does like visually decrease the size of the die cut, and also it kind of gives me a place I can tuck it into the photo, so you can see that sort of darker pink floral flower in that cluster can sit above the photo, and that's kind of what I'm after. I'm kind of wanting to be able to layer the background, the florals, and my photo. So that does mean like in situations like this, I really do want this daffodil-ish flower to be kind of a bit more prominent. The floral clusters are, I guess, designed for more 12 by 12 layouts, so they are quite large, which means that maneuvering them into this traveler's notebook sized format just requires a little bit of editing, and that can mean cutting these floral clusters apart, trimming the edges off them, just that sort of thing. I'm just going to make it work. So I'm doing the same thing with this one. It's going to end up sort of more on the white portion of the page, so it's not quite as necessary, but some of these pieces are going to stick out above that pattern paper. So I am just going ahead and trimming out the whole thing. I'm not being too precise about it. It just makes it visually smaller, so it means I can tuck some of these things in. Now I've added one of the daffodils over onto the left-hand side of the page, and so then like technically I've got 2 clusters over here. I'm going to add some florals at the top and one down the bottom, so that kind of does give me my like visual triangle, but I just feel like the left-hand side of that photo is super bare. The right-hand side of it is really busy, and I just want to pop something kind of bottom left corner here just to balance it out visually. It sort of looks like it wants to topple over, I guess is how it feels. So I just trimmed out one portion of leaves, not a huge amount, and I'm just going to tuck that in on underneath the photo on the left hand side of it, and then I can go ahead and arrange some of these florals on the rest of the page. So I have more of a vague idea of where things are going now, so I can go ahead and adhere the rest of the pattern paper down and then start attaching the florals. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one at the top. I'm going to tuck it under and above the photo, so it's going more over top of the pattern paper than what I had originally thought. But the daffodil that I've trimmed out, it's going to end up down at the bottom here, but just having it at the top was too tall, again with these large florals. So it's going to tie those other 2 floral clusters together, and it was sort of lucky happenstance. I really much prefer it. It just feels so much more balanced. I've got the daffodil on the left, one down the bottom on the right, and then I have another yellow floral at the top as well. So it's just a little bit more balanced. Now from that second pack of die cuts that I've got, there's a little green banner that says "From My Garden." I figured that was fairly appropriate. I'm just going to tuck that in as well. Again, some on top, some underneath those floral clusters. And then I'm going to work on the left-hand side of my page, which is really going to be very simple. I'm going to cluster a few stamps together and create a title. I've picked out a few different ink colors that match, well, as closely as I can match these colors. This is a scripty sort of font that says "this," and then I'm going to use one of the word phrases that says "bright," and then I'm going to use some alpha stamps just to finish off the phrase, and I'm going to spell out "moment." So this bright moment. I decided to stamp in a couple of different greens as well as that sort of pinky red. I don't need to add any yellow because the yellow of the daffodil is going to just balance out those colors. So adding a lot more green than I probably normally would was one of my takeaways from my No Pink month. I've definitely learned how to use green, and so I'm using this, I think it's the Bailey alphabet, and I'm just gonna use my ruler guide to make sure it's as straight as I can possibly get it. I mean straight for me, that is, not particularly a straight stamper, and this word definitely took up more sort of room than I thought, but again, accidentally, it sort of just lines up with the top of that photo, so the visual sort of draw brings your eye across the page. Now I'm adding a little bit of journaling. I just did that on some scrap paper on my typewriter, and by the time I adhere that onto my page, you can't even tell that it wasn't typed straight onto the page. I thought I was finished, and so I turned the camera off, and then as I was sort of looking around my desk, I had this little bowl that's full of sequins that come in the citrus twist boxes, and they seem to be like the perfect color. So I decided that I have not added sequins in the longest time. I still love these little suckers. I love adding a bit of sparkle to my page, so I'm just going to flip a few of those around. I've got some green ones, some kind of peachy ones, a couple of sort of goldeny clear ones. I thought the colors were perfect. I just use a little bit of multi-matte medium to adhere those, so I just, once I get the hole cleared, square it out a little bit onto some scrap paper, and then just use some tweezers to pop the sequins into the glue and pop them onto my page, and then I am careful to let these dry before I go ahead and shut my notebook. So that's it. That's this very simple spread done. It did take me a little bit longer than usual because of all that fussy cutting, and I know it seems a little bit superfluous cutting off the white and leaving a bit of white, but I feel like it really did kind of make all the difference. Hey, thank you for watching today, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed the video and this brought a little bit of spring brightness into your life. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, I'm going to leave a couple of videos on screen for you. Otherwise, I'll see you again really soon. Bye.